So welcome back to the next update. So today we're going to look at upgrading some of the monitors. So we're going to look at upgrading the internal ones, what that actually means in the sense of we want to keep the original casings because all the original leather is trimmed around these, but we want to be replacing the internals and the two in the side windows as well. The side window ones that we have are going to be an upgrade and they're going to be bigger. I want to try and make them more towards the glass as well to make it look like they're more in one place. Then we will look at the wiring involved in setting all of these up originally and then the more modern stuff that we're replacing it with. I want to say a massive thanks to everyone that reached out following my update last week regarding the body kit and what the next steps are. So overwhelmingly, all the messages I received, I think it was really positive. I think people understand that if we're likely to do the repairs, we might as well do some upgrades to the bodywork whilst we're going through it. I did make a mistake saying that this didn't have a spring box. As I've pulled all the install out and we will go through a bit later on, there are springs within the system. They're not, they are mounted directly to the rear shocks and I think there's some accumulators in the back potentially for the front, but what we really need to understand is how the hydraulics on this is actually set up and then look to see some improvements of whether or not we can use the existing hydraulic system on the car. So to see whether or not we're actually going to add a separate, more traditional style spring box or whether or not we can put some upgrades to the original system and use it as is. So all of these things, I think the big thing around that's going to be though, we need to understand where the limits, the maximum height for maximum drop of that suspension is already set and can we modify the body kit to increase to ensure that when it's hydrated out, it's still hugging the floor, but to give enough lift to raise it off the ground so we can actually physically use the car. So lots to come and there's going to be quite a lot of head scratching on that journey. But today, let's look at these. So the first job is to remove all the brains and everything from these, from the car, strip out, see exactly what we've got, and then start the plan on getting these fitted back in. So let's start pulling these apart. So as we come into the rear of the car, what we've got mounted up on the rear shelf is some brains, and then there's some splitters and modules there. So the first job is going to be pull basically all of the S-Video equipment out, and then we'll have a look at it on the bench to see exactly what it does and how it was wired. Now we've removed all of the rear of the car, we can actually see the rear of the hydro system just tucked in there. Now if I adjust the car, you'll see as we go down, the spring moves. And goes up. And the same on this side over here. It's a little bit more hidden. So they're not particularly balancing out. So that's one part we're going to have to look at. There's some accumulators behind them as well. So is it all just going to have to see how it's hooked up, and we might as well do that whilst the whole kit's out and we can have a proper map through of what's going on with the hydros. I think that's going to be a big decider on whether or not we keep it or we change it. You can get into the rear of the subs, all the amp enclosure, so a lot of that's going to have to come out, I think. This is an old 5 farad power cap that we need to look at. I don't think it's really doing much nowadays, to be honest. So we're probably likely to remove that out of the system as well, and because we won't particularly need it when we're running the lithium-ion batteries. So here we have everything's taken out. So the 7-inch screens that were in the rear, the 6.5 inches that were in the side pods, and then the 2 ones that I put into the side. So what happened originally, before the interior was done for the first Max Power show it was released in, it just had 2 of these in these side monitors, and then when Charisma did the interior originally, they were taken out, a Charisma logo was just put into these panels, and then the screens were moved along with the other ones on the inside. And then I reinstated these 2 when I first reconditioned it about 5 years ago. So we've got all the brains. These are S-Video Boost signal boosters, because as you can imagine, it's splitting the signal multiple times across all the screens, and then an absolute rat's nest of wiring. So RCA cables. These two converters are from when I replaced the old plasma TV to a modern TV, so I had to do a digital to analog converters, but the majority of the rest of the wiring is all original. So that's the old stuff coming out. Now I'll run through the new stuff going back in. So in a nutshell, what we've got going on. So we've got a 4K HDMI splitter, which is a 9-port splitter. So essentially from the visual input, it would go in here, and then we can split across to the 9 monitors just using a HDMI cable. That'll transmit sound and video all in one. So all we need to run to each screen is a HDMI cable and a 5-volt power. These are the new screens that will be going to the side windows. Now, what I've done is I've removed the front bezel. The plan is to add a bit of foam tape around to the sides, mount them into the existing side pods, and then they should press up to the window. So we're going from a 6-inch screen to an 11-inch screen. And then once you see it, essentially what you should only see is the actual screen part here, and that'll all be mounted within the screen. And lastly, I'm replacing all of the monitors with a 7-inch. Now, the downside of that is for the 6.5-inch cases, the screen, we're slightly going to lose some of the edges, but in all fairness, it's negligible, and they do physically fit in the carcasses. So there's a bit of working around to do, but both of these will fit into these carcasses. And essentially these screens have on them is just a HDMI input and then a mini USB power. And then they're all contained within the back. To give you some reference to technology and the size difference from 2000 until now, this is the original 7-inch screen, and that's the amount of components on the rear. Then obviously, and then that would lead from there and go into a brain, and the same that we saw earlier, and all of that now gets replaced by this. So there is a weight saving, not that it really makes that much difference in this aspect. However, what the difference will be power consumption. These are 1/10 of the power consumption of something like this. That's just going to add to stability and enable me to run the system longer when it's not on external power. There's a bit of work to be doing off counter to get these mounted into these cases, and I'll run through that in a separate video. But today, what we want to look at is getting these sort of semi-mounted into the side pods and build a plan going forward with that. Okay, so to enable it to get to as close as possible to the glass, we're going to leave the actual front bezel off, and we're going to add just a bit of tape around these edges just to hold the actual screen into the trim. We use the mounting points on the rear, more than likely to locate the screen. So with that, we will literally just use a bit of gaffer tape. It's not really holding any weight, it just helps us hold it all together as we are doing it. Just being mindful, I do need to get to, there's a switch there. And our power's on this side. That'd be more than ample to hold it in place. What we will do though is add a foam strip around the screen just to aid it as it pushes up against the glass. Right, and that's the screen prepped, ready to go in. So the next piece will be to use a window frame to trim around the tinted area to increase the cutout size, and what we will do is we'll make it slightly smaller just to give us a bit of an edge, just to make sure so we've got a bit of movement when fitting. So we'll do that next. Okay, so what we essentially have on this window is just a piece of tint film stuck onto the window. Remove this trim. So the window's just been tinted, and then it's had a cutout for the original screen. So what we're going to do is use the bezel for the screen here. We will line it up with the original, we'll tape it on, and then we'll use that as a template to cut out round. What I've done on this little blade is I've just stuck two washers, and that gives us a little gap in between the edge of the trim and the frame, just to give us a little bit of play. There's a couple of ways to remove tint film. Heating it up is one of them. However, when you heat it up, it does tend to leave glue. So we'll try it cold. If that doesn't work, then we will heat it up. It's just a bit more cleanup when you do it that way. Right, let's get a cloth and just give it a quick clean. With a monitor in place. So I think I'm going to swap this foam out for some black foam, because you can from the gap you can slightly see it on the edges. So I think that's probably going to be slightly better. Let's put some black foam on there. And I think rather than using these existing panels, I'm going to make some straps. Let's come here, screw in here, screw down. We've got some location pins and stuff at the bottom, and then pop them in that way. And then we have access to the HDMI on this side. And we can run the cable down here and along and back round to the back. So that's basically it. So I've just temporarily mounted it up so I can get some measurements, so I can start making some brackets to get it fitted. I'm going to put some slightly smaller foam on there just to get it closer to the window. But I think you agree, it's a much nicer upgrade than the one that was in there. Looks bigger. The biggest difference though is the brightness is a lot brighter. It's more nits within the screen. So on bright days, you should be able to see it clearer. But one of the smaller things is a nice upgrade to it without losing the character of the car. Keep an eye, next couple of weeks, potentially next month, we'll have some big movements around the body kit, things like that. But there's going to be a lot of things that I need to get in place ready for to start cutting in on the bodywork, lots of measurements. But we'll bring you along on the journey on that as well, because your feedback and input is important to us. So that's one job ticked off the list. I don't need to replicate for the other side, but already moving into the right direction, ready for next year.